months ago when Lenny had a show, different time.
Yes, I do remember listening to you. So, yeah, I think we did meet, and we did speak. So I'm sorry you've been having technical issues.
Yeah, that's all right. I've been having technical issues with everything for like a month.
I think life has become a technical issue, and that everybody's got to work through it however we can.
We affect our own electronics.
Well, the biggest lesson, we blame. I've learned like a really big. Go ahead.
I was just saying that we always tend to blame, Google or Microsoft or whatever, but a lot of the time, I think we're affecting our own electronics ourselves with our own energy output.
I'm convinced you're right about that. Go, Bridgette.
One of the biggest lessons I've had over the last month is dealing with a lot of this stuff. And one of the things that, keeps coming up is, anger, because I just want things to work so that, I can get the other work that I need to get done. But, the thing is like, if I had plenty of money in the bank account, I really wouldn't care at all if any of this stuff worked. It's out of necessity that I need it to work. So I've been really working, dealing with my anger issues and trying to, energetically stand in my power, when I deal with these people, so that they are quick and fast in turning things around energetically for me, or, flipping on this switch, or handling this, or managing that. And so I know a lot of this stuff has to do with, it's setting me off, which is an energetic thing, me needing this stuff to work. And then also now I'm moving into where I'm dealing with the people on the other side who need to clear up whatever is happening or give me the proper information, learning how to communicate with them better without, bringing all this other stuff in there. Because one of the things that starts to pop up is the reason why I'm angry. I get this poor me syndrome, like, oh, poor me, like this has gone down. Like, how am I going to get my client online today? Like I really need to put that money in the bank or whatever else. And so getting away from all that to, that's always going to be in the background, but it's how I'm feeling about that stuff. So if I can change how I feel about it and then just hit whatever the issue is head on, in clarity, in standing in my power, in the communication that I have to have with these other people. Because right now, everybody talks about community. Well, unfortunately, I have to be forced into community, with the guy who's on the phone at YouTube. I'm in community with Google. I'm in community with all these other, things and the people who are being paid, through these companies. So one of the biggest things that I've been learning over the month is, to really watch my anger, really watch my, hostility, that things aren't working, that I have to deal with it again. And because sometimes, that's the thing about how the 3D works. It only has two sides. It has, light and dark. And, that's problematic because, the dark starts to rise up and the light has to reach up to fight it. And then the light gets too high and the darkness has to reach up and fight it. That's the polarity of this reality. The duality, the polarity, whatever you want to talk about, it has two sides. So when you have two sides, you're never going to have balance. The seesaw is going to be from one extreme to the other. So what you have to do is, or what I'm, going back to my teachings, for my teacher Babadoh, Shoshone, elder medicine man, from my teachings from him is that, you know, I have to incorporate the balance, which is like the four sides. You know, everything in kind of the native realm has either 4 or 7 are big numbers. Everything is the 4 directions, the 4 seasons, you know, 4 sides to everything. And where am I at in those 4 sides? You know, what kind of foundation am I personally building? So that if I have to deal with a seesaw, you know, I'm somewhere in the middle of that seesaw. So I'm not, you know, creating hostility or frustration or whatever else to the person on the other side of the phone call, so that their seesaw goes up, mine comes down, and then we go back and forth on the seesaw over the course of a conversation. So trying to figure out, you know, come from a place of balance within myself, making sure that I'm not angry or frustrated or whatever else, and that's not going to be projected onto the other person. So we're in a, you know, darkness and light, you know, battlefield. And a lot of it has to do with, like, where my voice is at. You know, is my voice down low enough? Is it reverberating in my chest? Is it coming from my heart? Or is it way up here in my mind? You know, because people are going to react to you just based on every little detail that you have. You know, when you're coming from a place of power, you know, your voice is deeper and it reverberates in your chest. When you're coming from a neurotic, stressed out space, you know, like this, then your voice goes up higher, and then you're all in the mind. And, you know, you connect with people that way. I notice with animals right away. You know, like if I'm in my headspace and I'm trying to get my dog to do something from, you know, the higher voice in my mind because I'm stressed out, my dog gets more crazy and will not listen to me and just do whatever she wants to do. But if I get my voice down and I get it in my heart because I'm in my body, you know, I'm in my power, all I have to do is say something once and she does it immediately. Same with the horses and, you know, everything else. So I know that when I'm talking to somebody out of frustration, like on a phone call, I have to be really careful about where am I at, you know, and how is that going to project onto that other person. And if I'm not projecting in a good way and I'm projecting from a neurotic space, a stressed out space, an angered space, irritated space, fear-based space, then that person's just going to catch wind of that and like an animal, and it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a battle.
Yeah, in the
so
rest...
the bigger lesson for me for like the last month has been really, you know, working my medicine, you know, really working my path, and just really staying focused no matter what shows up on my path, and not to have a pity party because things aren't working, or this isn't happening, or this communication, or the money is not coming in, or I can't keep a roof over my head, or I'm stressed out because I'm getting ready to go on this 4-month trip, and things are not really coming together as much as I need them to come together. So I just come back to me, and, you know, just try to focus in on, you know, me coming back into balance, whatever that's going to be for that day.
Yes, coming.
So that way, you know, I'm not in an energy war.
Yeah, coming from the direction we came this morning, where we didn't get you on right away when the show started, was no stress at all, because I knew that we had ways of figuring out how to get the communications going. When you talk about the black and white of duality, everybody treats it as a slide register. It's either black or white, and then you can slide between the two and get your shades of gray. But the analogy I like to use with what's happening now is that we're in Pleasantville. The color has come on full blast, and that shadow work is not only working with dark and light, weaving those together, but also standing outside from another perspective. When you talk about the 4 different directions of the red way, and I've been talking about moving from a duality to a trinity, in number theory, like I talked about yesterday, 3 and 4 are actually the same number, because you don't get any difference with a group of 3 to a group of 4 for working function, but what you get is a boost by having the extra person. So really, when you have a group of 3, you have one person who can work with 2, or the 2 can interact as one-on-one, and there's all sorts of shifting around. And with 4, you get those same smaller groups. When you get to a group of 5, it really starts a different path. But in any case, every number is plus or minus 1. And when we remember we're working on human scale and we can't subdivide one human, then the numbers at the lower sense are important in a Fibonacci sense. But as things grow on human scale, the doubling function takes over. So I think what you said about frequency self-regulation is exactly dead on. If you allow your frequency to get into the lower frequencies and start creating stress to the system, everything acts as a mirror and reflects that stress, and the amplitude goes up. But by being in your heart and your mind and being able to know that when you're stressed and in your mind, you can move to your heart and calm down, really takes you into that third place of soul where the heart and the mind are calm and the real gist of the matter can come out and start speaking to people. I've noticed that...
This is the deal.
Yeah.
Right. So, when you're dealing with, like, say, the wheel, the medicine wheel. So each thing has its own wheel. It also, each thing has its own altar, basically, in the middle of its own medicine wheel structure. So that's, you're the same. So in each direction, there's, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And on the outside of that wheel are all your life experiences that are in bundles around the wheel. So I'm going to describe it in kind of a 3D way. And so in the wheel, say, for example, the Lakota way on the wheel, different tribes are a little bit different, but say, for example, that you have a lot of stuff that's going on in your, that's sending you back memory-wise to your childhood. Then you would go to the south part, the south gate of your wheel, because that's where those experiences are, right? And that's where you mature, into an adult. That's where you deal with a lot of the childhood experiences, that you've had, and it's a very physical world place. So each part on the wheel, you have the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, basically, and how the directions that are affected by that. So we'll say the physical world, and like in a Lakota way, would be the south gate, the south part of your medicine wheel. So what happens is that one of the things that I've learned in the teachings is that I have to be in my wheel, in the center of my wheel, being able to look at all the functions going on in my wheel, also to be able to not manipulate or control, but to stand in the center. So if your wheel starts to go off, in the Cherokee, they explain the wheel as it's being held perfectly and straight, you standing in the middle, the fire, the consuming fires in the middle, and then it's held by spider webs in the sky. So what happens is that when you start to focus too much on one side, then your wheel starts to tilt. And then all your energy and everything else can literally slide off. This is the way that I see it. So in order to keep your personal will totally balanced is the function of your work, because that is definitely going to affect the outside. The Hopis have a statement. It says, the war is not outside of you, the war is inside of you. And when you resolve the inner war, the outer war will stop. And that doesn't mean that out in the physical world that everything's going to stop being the way that it is. It's just your way of dealing with the outside world is going to cease, which is going to come from the inner peace and the inner workings of your own personal medicine wheel. So, so that we can get off that whole seesaw thing, the one thing going up or the one thing going down. So the components, like of the medicine wheel are really important. And then you have, then the 4 can move into a 7, which is the 7 directions from the 4 directions. So once you figure out your personal wheel and your directions, and you start working with that information, so you start to feel when you start to tilt immediately, so that tilting doesn't happen. You don't, your cheese doesn't slide off your cracker, so to speak. So when you move into like the 7, then that's when you become like a vortex. So, but you have to work with the 4 first to get your balance and your foundation working well, and it's all about your internal self. So when it goes to the 7, then you connect your feet to the earth. Then you connect the 4 directions, which is, moving in a clockwise direction. Then you connect your feet to the earth as a pivotal point. And then you connect to the ancestors. And then you can call in the creator, you can call into yourself, into the space, which is your heart. And then boom, it opens you up as a vortex of energy on the planet, and that reaches out into the cosmos. So this is kind of like, when I talk about energy and stuff like that, this is kind of like what I've, had these kinds of teachings for, a lot of my teachers have been trying to teach me this stuff for 27 years. And it's only been in the last, 3 years that I've really been coming back to working with that. But you can't be a vortex of energy if you can't get your 4 points straightened out. Because then your vortex is always going to have a speed wobble.
Yeah, and
because it's going to be imbalanced, and then it like bounces off everything else that has an energy vortex, and then the unified system is you. It isn't you out with the outside of you. It's you being a unified system, because your brain doesn't even connect in the center. When you pull, like if you take apart a corpse or whatever else, and you have the brain in your hand, and you can actually pull it. You don't even have to pull it. They will separate the 2 lobes. The only thing that connects the brain is in the cord. So the brain is not really, both sides of your brain is not connected, and that's like wrong term. It should be your brains. So each side of your brain, one's reptilian, and one is like more of which is past and future, and one is present moment. But most of us don't even operate in the right hemisphere at all. So we're left hemisphere lateralized. So we have, so even in our bodies, right there, we have a serious imbalance. We're in those polarities, dark, light, and then each side of our brain operates a different side of our body. So then we're separated in our body. So it's about us coming into being a unified system in our own. Anybody that's having, has one leg shorter than the other, your body is not a unified system. Your brain is not a unified system. So those things have to be corrected as well. So when you're dealing with, like, say, the south part of your wheel, where the physical world healing needs to take place, you may need to get a chiropractor. You may need to get your brain rebooted, and so that your body can become symmetrical on both sides, and then both sides of your hemisphere working together. So not only is all of this stuff, it's working on multiple levels, but it starts with your body becoming a unified system. And then that way you have longevity. You're not going to, have a lot of disease because both hemispheres are on, and you're not just operating in a left hemisphere, which is disease state, acid, stress state, more of the reptilian type state. And the reptile part has, it's very active towards the outside world. It's very reactive towards whatever is going on in the outside world, because the reptilian part of our brain is, cold, calculated. Our bodies are colder when we run like a really low brainwave pattern. And so there's, and then, it's constantly reacting to what it sees. instead of learning not to react, which is the right hemisphere, which doesn't really give, a poop about what's going on outside. But because we don't have enough right hemisphere. So let me just throw one more thing out there. When we, a lot of, let's just say, in South America, they were originally called sorcerers. I mean, now they call them shamans, but originally the term was sorcerer. The word shaman comes from Russia. It's, shamanism. That's where my family comes from. It's why I do the work that I do. And then, there's medicine people in the Americas and Canada. So they all have kind of different terms, but a lot of them, even in some of the mainstream work, they talk about how that you have the night dream and the daydream, right? So when you're walking around and you think you're awake and, you're going to your job or whatever else, you're in your wake dream, right? But it's no different than a dream, right? They look at this whole world as this holographic thing. I mean, when I was going down when I was in Taos, in the Pueblo, the Taos people would come, they talked about the creator, God, or whatever you want to talk about, as the great computer in the sky. So then so they talk about, how you're walking around and it's your walking dream, your waking dream. And then at night you go to sleep and you have the night dream. So in a lot of old ancient shamanism and a lot of the practices, they teach you how to interweave the daydream with the night dream. And that takes a lot of work. And one of the best books that you can get in the mainstream is The Art of Dreaming by Carlo Castaneda. And he worked on this for 15 years. Don Juan Matus gave him the work, and he went in, and it took him 15 years to be able to make it work. But basically, so you have this night dream, if you are dreaming. If you're not dreaming at all, then, that's a whole other issue. It means that your right brain is really not working. It's not working in the night dream. It's like shut down. So that's how people can know if their left brain lateralized is, because you should be doing full dreaming at night. And you may have to correct that to actually assist the right brain to get it back online. Because basically, if we're looking at a seesaw, our left hemisphere is going to be the darkness. The right hemisphere is going to be the light. So if the right hemisphere is not working real well, then you're going to be you're still going to be operating in a lot of darkness, because the seesaw has, basically the darkness is one side up because of the programming. But so the key is, so in the night dream, you have omnipotent possibility. So in the night dream, you can travel wherever you want to go. You can talk to people. You can, jump off a roof. You can fly. You can do all these very right brain, omnipresent type things. Well, the left hemisphere during the waking dream during the day is very technical. Walking in a body. I mean, you basically have to learn how to operate a car, because your biosuit is a car, right? So that's what you kind of learn most of your life is how to run, how to ride a bike, how to use your operating systems, and then learn about your operating systems. I have to eat food, and I have to eat certain kinds of food to have this car run right, and this is how I do this, and this is how I use my hands, and this is what I can build, and this is how I do this, and all this other stuff. In order to be a unified being, you need both systems to be completely enmeshed together as one operating system and not separated. And so a lot of these shaman people will tell you, or medicine people, or sorcerers, whatever you want to call them, the ones that I've studied with, will tell you that once you start enmeshing both of these worlds that work through the brain, and the biosuit, and your spirit and your body, all these twos coming together as one. So you start to not really need as much sleep anymore, because your night dream and your daydream start to mesh together. So when that happens, then you don't need as much sleep, and you can bring some of the, let's just call it right hemisphere magic into your walking dreams. So you start to see people like, you know, shaman people disappear and reappear in front of you. Or, you know, there was that, I remember in the 80s, I watched this video that a friend of mine got that came from one of those Baba Hari Das kind of guys, you know, from India. And he came to America in New York, and he was in a huge snowstorm. And he actually got out of the car, and he stood on the pavement. I mean, deep ice, deep snow. He was wearing, you know, really thin cotton pants and, you know, traditional guru clothing with, you know, like Jesus sandals. And all of a sudden, the snow started to melt away from his feet, and even on the pavement became dry. And then he started to walk, and as he walked, the snow started to melt on the pavement, and all the snow that was coming down wouldn't touch his energy field within, you know, like 6 feet radius. It would just like disappear. It wasn't even getting him wet. And he had this sphere of energy and heat around him, so he wasn't even cold. So these people have like merged their right brain with their left brain, and so when they're walking in this world, they control the experience in their direct environment, right? And so then if they go to sleep and they go in their night dream, they can bring some of the left hemisphere technical stuff into the right hemisphere. So you have more control when you're dreaming, right? So your dreams are not taking you everywhere else, but you actually control where your dreams are going. And you control what you want to go see, where you want to go, and things like that. So one of the things that I do is whenever I need corrective work on my body, say my body's really hurting and I don't really feel good, I will use my technical left brain skills in my right brain dreaming world, and I will go to the places where I have teachers. I have one teacher, shaman, whatever, he was a powerful herbalist and healer in this world, and then he left this world and he created his own world. So I go visit him when I'm in my right brain, and he gives me adjustments, he gives me acupuncture, and he gives me like herbal remedies or whatever else. So when I wake up, I'm feeling much better than when I went into the dreaming world. But I couldn't be able to go see him if I didn't have these merging worlds, you know. So then when I come back to this world, I have a little bit more, you know, right brain in this world because, you know, I've just been altered and shift, right, when I was in my right brain. But I needed the technical left brain to be able to walk into my dreaming world and say, hey, I'm coming towards you, and, you know, I'm going to find you, and I'm going to end up in your world, and so I'll sit in your apothecary while you take care of me. So it's a whole, once you start moving out of, I don't know, you know, once you start working with your four directions and yourself, your internal self, and how you deal with this reality, and then you start to bring more right brain into it with the left hemisphere, then you can bring more magic and, I don't know what to call it, more, you know, that kind of medicine into this world and the abilities that you can have with dealing with this world. And then you can take some of your left brain into the night dream, which can take you to a whole bunch of other places. And I highly recommend, you know, if people want to take this kind of journey, that they start reading The Art of Dreaming by Carlo Castaneda, so they can learn some of these techniques so they can get to what's called the fourth attention.
Yes.
And it takes quite a bit of time to move through it. I mean, most of us are functioning, even right now in this conversation, you know, in the first attention. They haven't even really moved to the second attention. And then as you move into the second attention, the third attention, and the fourth attention, you heal that right hemisphere and its abilities. But like I said, it needs to be an enmeshment of both, right? Because you are the unified field. And if you're not a unified body, a unified brains, right? Your brains aren't unified into one. Your body's not symmetrical. on both sides, which shows an indication that you have both hemispheres that are actually working properly together.